can we get you to stand up?
Sure.
If that's not coming to part, take mine.
I think one of the reasons why I was invited to come here and talk is because of my knowledge and my training in the brain sciences. And after looking at this video, and this wasn't the first time I had actually looked at this video, I had seen it once or twice before, and I was struck by a few things. I think the largest thing, the thing I'd like to talk about the most, was one of the comments made by the Attorney General, I think it was, or the prosecutor, when he was talking about willingness. And I guess one of the things I'd like to make sure that everyone here understands is that the human brain, certainly the part of the brain that's responsible for decision-making, planning, inhibiting inappropriate behaviors during certain times, that's called the frontal lobe, and it doesn't mature until age 25 in most people. And this isn't really any surprise to anybody here, because anybody who's had children, who's had teenagers, know that they can become aliens during the teenage years, and that's in part because the frontal lobes really aren't functioning properly. The problem is that there are other brain areas that are called subcortical areas that are responsible for motivational behaviors like sexual behavior, aggression, fear. Those are fully developed, and the frontal lobe, which isn't, in an adult, is really there to kind of mediate those sort of lower structures and some of those behaviors, which is what you're doing now. In somebody who is an adolescent, their frontal lobes really aren't developed. There's subcortical structures that are responsible for some of these behaviors that you were just looking at in the show, are more likely to come out, and they're not really acting like adults. They certainly don't think like adults. They don't have the inhibition. They're impulsive. And so when I heard if an individual is willing to exhibit a particular behavior, to engage in a particular inappropriate behavior, that they should be prosecuted as such as an adult, I cringed, because the notion of willingness here is tricky. Because you're looking at a young man or a young woman whose brain isn't fully developed. They're not making decisions appropriately, and we all know that, even in our own children. But in this case, some of those behaviors can get an individual into legal trouble that will follow them for the rest of their lives. And then the other difficulty is these individuals who are in the process of developing their brain specifically, they then get placed in an environment that really is stripped of all motivation. It's really stripped of all decision making. It's an environment in which the frontal lobes won't develop very well. So when they get out, you're looking at an individual who really is stunted. And in this case, the video you saw, you could tell there was a very big difference between him and his younger brothers. And so I guess what I'd like to leave you with, and I'm sure there'll be questions on this later, when you look at Alonzo, and you look at other individuals, children who commit crimes, you can't believe that you're really looking at an individual whose brain is functioned fully. In fact, the part of the brain that's really responsible for keeping behavior appropriate isn't really fully developed until the age of 25. And so they're not adults, they're different, biologically different, physiologically different. And it can only get worse if they're put in an environment without the appropriate training. So I'll just leave it there, I guess, for now.
Pass it on to Kelly. Our next guest is one